professional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And we are still in July. It is still theater month here.
Theater.
It's time to be dramatic. Shireen knows all about that.
I was going to say, when am I not dramatic? Like, every month is theater month for
Every
me.
month, theater month, and none of them are theater month for me, but that's okay. But despite that, I love the theater. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, maybe it's because I like the drama to be not in my own life. I'd prefer it to just be somewhere else in front of me where I can just appreciate it from a distance and not have to deal with it myself.
It's the only place where your drama manifests.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's it exactly. And so we figured that we would do something fun this week. Change it up. Something fun. Next week we're going to do something less fun, more tragic, I guess. So,
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. So this week we are talking about Chicago from 2002. It's really hard to, I think, do like a whole month talking about theater without talking about musicals in some way, shape, or form, because it just feels like they're such like an integral part of the theater scene itself, and really they tend to be the biggest crowd draw in a lot of cases as well.
Absolutely. I mean, they're catchy, right? Like, there's songs that are catchy, and it's just a good time. You know?
Like, this is going to be Chicago, I think, is the kind of film or production, whatever you'd like to call it, where even if you haven't seen it, you've definitely like heard some of the songs, and you probably kind of know what it's about, even if you don't really know what the details are of the story. So let's just dive in. Let's just dive in. Let's talk about it.
Your hair and wear your buckle shoes and all that jazz.
Velma has it.
I want a brand new start to do that jazz.
Roxy wants it.
All my life, I wanted to have my own act.
That's great. I'll be in touch.
You know, I'm not quite finished yet.
Face it, Roxy, you ain't never gonna have an act.
So Chicago was released in 2002 and is currently right now sitting at a score of 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb and 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. No shocks. No surprises.
No, that's about
it. You know, it just makes sense. I get it. I couldn't see anybody really having like any kind of a different reaction to it most of the time. A little bit of background. Initially, Chicago was obviously a Broadway musical. And the initial production took place, actually the initial production happened in 1975.
Oh, wow.
So this is a story that's been around for quite a long time. The music was done by a man named John Kander, lyrics by Fred Ebb, and the book basically, so the story itself and everything to do with choreography was done by Fred Ebb and Bob Fosse. If anybody's ever heard of Bob Fosse, that was like the name that stood out to me. He is a very well-renowned, or he was, I should say, a very well-renowned director and choreographer, particularly dancer choreographer within the theater and even film scene. To a certain extent, he was incredible at what he did, and he choreographed the original That's It production of Chicago, and I think a lot of everything that's been done since then has been based on his original choreographies and whatnot as well.
Yeah, because it's still going. Like, if you go to New York City,
can you still see Chicago?
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know.
I was there a year ago. And I'm pretty sure that there was still an option to go see Chicago.
Okay, well, I believe that. That makes sense. So it's like, you know, it's one like, that's it. You've at least seen the poster for it, even if you haven't seen it, even if you don't know what it is. This was a first time watch for you.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so, which I did not know, by the way. I thought, I was like, oh, I haven't seen it in a while. It would be fun to revisit. Yeah. I did not realize that you hadn't seen it at all.
Like, anything that came out, like, I guess early 2000s, like when I was a kid. I remember when this movie came out. I remember wanting to rent it at the video store.
Sure.
And my mom was just really not into musicals or anything like that. Okay. Which, like, you know, having watched Chicago now, my mom loves a good murder, you know.
Yeah, you're like, she would have really liked this.
She would have quite liked this. So I was watching it. But, you know, it was just something that never occurred to me to go back and watch later on. Yeah.
Yeah, so technically so my understanding is that the original idea for this musical came from actually a play from back in the 20s that was written by a woman named Maureen Dallas Watkins. She was a reporter.
Oh, wow.
And these were based on crimes technically that she reported on. Now, obviously, a lot is changed as far as like the story and everything is concerned, but her inspiration and what she did came from there. And as a matter of fact, there is a female reporter, Mary Sunshine, who's played by Christine Baranski in the film, who's one of the characters in the musical, that apparently she wrote as like a little like sort of self-referential character within the play itself when she originally wrote the story for it, which is always interesting, those like little Easter eggs. So basic plot line, let's say Chicago is set in the mid 1920s.
In Chicago.
That's the name of the play anyway. And it's very jazz age, prohibition, and very much something that was like basically a critique and a satire of the time about like, sort of the corruption of like the justice system, and how being flashy and fake can get you off for something as severe as murder. And at the time, if you consider the way that the justice system would have functioned at that time, as well as the total lack of regulatory anything for reporting on different subjects, it would have been very easy to either condemn or to protest someone's innocence, no matter what actual evidence existed in order to convict people of a particular crime. And that comes through in the story, too.
Yeah, I was really noticing that in the story. And they say multiple times, like something along the lines of like how murder is fashionable in Chicago.
Basically,
and like, like there's always a murder, there's always something new going on. And like, if you're not killing someone, then like, who are you even? Like it's very satirical in that way. Yeah.
So basically, what kicks everything off is that, okay, I'm sorry, so I'm getting confirmation now looking at this that it's actually set in 1924, which makes sense.
That makes sense, yep.
So a housewife named Roxy Hart, played by Renee Zellweger in the film, is basically she doesn't do anything. All she wants to do is be in show business. She wants to be a vaudeville performer more than like anything in the world. That is what she wants completely. The opening that we're getting is basically like, we do flash forward a little bit after that, like a little period of time, which might have been where your confusion came in as to like when things were happening. So basically what happens at the beginning of the film is that there's the opening number is All That Jazz.
Yeah.
And we're treated to like, that's it, sort of like Chicago club scene, basically, like a vaudeville club. And Velma Kelly, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, who I fucking love. I don't know what it is about her. I love her in everything.
I don't know. She seems mean to me. There's like
know.
nothing like, I don't know.
I've seen her interviewed and she seems lovely.
I'm sure, but whenever she plays characters, like her characters always have this like mean edge to them.
I think it's because what they did a good job with, like in the casting for the film anyway, is, you cast Renee Zellweger as Roxy, who arguably is the shittier of the two of them.
Definitely, yeah.
But she has so very much the demeanor and look of like your ingenue type that it's so easy to believe her and root for her. Whereas with, Velma, despite the fact that obviously, like, everybody's in prison for a crime. Everybody's done something. But, like, despite the fact that that's it, like, she also has done, like, sort of the same levels of things. Yeah. You automatically see her as more of a villain. And it's that whole, like, blonde versus dark hair thing from, like, old movies. It's that whole, like, your ingenue versus your femme fatale character and, like, the different ways that they portray that. And I think that Catherine Zeta-Jones has been boxed into that a little bit just because of how fucking gorgeous she is. Pretty much, yeah. But, it's fine. It's cool. She's still getting to do stuff like that now. She's a great Morticia Addams.
Oh, she was great as Morticia.
She was a really great casting choice. As soon as I read it, I was like, yeah, I believe that. That's not a weird one for me at all. Mm-hmm. So anyway, basically, Roxy's at a club, sees Velma shows up to perform. We're given the impression she's meant to be performing with her sister Veronica because they're like a double act show. However, she goes up to do this, and she shows up by herself, says, "Oh, my sister's not feeling like herself tonight. It's fine. I'll go on without her." And she goes up, does the full All That Jazz number herself. At the same time, what we're seeing is that she's like trying to wash blood off her hands. And you quickly realize the police are showing up by the end of the number, and everything is that she murdered her sister and her husband. And we don't know why immediately, but spoiler alert, it's because she found out that they were having an affair, the two of them, basically. So she killed both of them in a jealous rage.
And then went on to perform flawlessly.
I know, like beautifully. You're like, wow, okay.
Wow, yeah.
I read a really funny thing somewhere, and I don't know how true it is, that said that basically apparently the director originally wanted Catherine Zeta-Jones to keep like her long hair that she usually has, but she insisted on like having a bob. Partially, I think, for the time period, but also because she apparently in like the dance scenes, she wanted people to realize that she was doing all the dancing, that it wasn't like as like a stand-in or anything, that she actually was doing all of it
perfectly. She looked great.
She always looks fucking good. Anyway, but yeah, it's true. She did, like, it works really well, and it makes sense to me for the time period as well. I think it would have been weird for her to have really long hair. I don't know.
I mean, they would have had to like pin it under,
and stuff. Do like a curl and like pin it,
but Renee Zellweger already had the curl going.
Exactly.
Right?
That's it, which also suited her really well and made sense for her character too. So I don't know. Anyway, so Roxy she's determined to be a vaudeville performer, and she's met this guy named Fred Casely, who
is
of course,
a furniture salesman.
Yes, he's an asshole, whatever. Like, you know, he's that kind of guy who's just like, well, I want to fuck this woman,
you a
so
star,
yeah, that's
baby.
it. So I can definitely make you a star, and it's that whole trope of like, you know, that's it, like the guy lies or whatever. So we're seeing that Velma's obviously arrested for the murder of her sister and her husband, and Roxy's been having this affair with this guy, Fred, who I'm sure started off super fucking nice, but now, of course, that he's gotten what he's wanted a few times, we've jumped forward in time, and she's, you know, trying to get more information from him about, like, hey, like, when are you going to introduce me to someone? It's been a while, blah, 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 whatever. And, of course, come to realize very quickly that he lied.
Yep.
Because, of course, he did.
Yep.
Men. Because he is a terrible person. And he lied because, of course, he just wanted to get into her pants. Ta-da, it worked. And so of course this sends her into a tizzy because, like I said, she's so fucking hyper focused on doing this with her life that she can't handle it. And when he gets very physical with her as he's trying to leave, because he's like, fuck off, like, I don't want you or this anymore. You're annoying, basically, and I've gotten what I've wanted from you. She pulls out a gun from the drawer, because America, I guess, and shoots him. Ta-da!
I was like so shocked because I had no idea. I thought that this movie was like a musical about the jazz age or something. And I'm like thinking it's all happy-go-lucky.
It is, but murder.
And like the whole thing about like Catherine Zeta-Jones like murdering her sister and all that did not catch on to that at all until like later on when they say it explicitly.
When they say it, yeah, that's it.
And then she shoots this guy, and I'm like,
whoa!
Oh, okay, like what are we in for here?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I'm so glad that you went into this without like a lot of knowledge of what it was about. It's so much better.
Idea. It was great.
So yeah, of course, obviously there's an investigation that's happening, and they're being questioned, and Roxy's, like I said, she's a housewife, so she is married. Her husband's name is Amos. He's played by John C. Reilly. He's so fucking sweet, but kind of stupid, but in a way that's so endearing that you're like, oh, poor Amos.
It's not his fault.
Amos is such a put upon.
Amos
is such a put upon character. He's so lovely that you're like, I feel so bad for him throughout the whole course of the story.
Well, it's very. It reminded me of what's his name there? The oh my God, what's his name in The Great Gatsby? There, George.
Yes.
Very much.
I see what you mean.
You know, very
like
much
George was a bit meaner, basically.
A bit, but I think like he was still pretty dumb, and he had this beautiful wife.
Yes, and he didn't know what to do with her.
He didn't know what to do with her. He
like
didn't know how to keep her.
A beautiful wife with aspirations for something that she didn't have with him, and he just didn't know how to deal with that. Yes, no, you're totally right. That's true. I never even thought of that, but it's true.
Much. Yeah.
So, of course, what's happening is that Amos, her husband, is basically, she's concocted this story with him for the police so that she doesn't get arrested, where he's saying like, oh yeah, like I came home and there was this guy who was burgling the apartment, and so I shot him, like, I killed him like before he could do anything. No, my wife was asleep, she didn't see anything, she didn't know anything. And Roxy's got this great number called Funny Honey, where she sings this little like ditty basically about her husband, where she's saying like, like he's not great. No, he's not good looking. No, he's not very smart. But she's like, he's so obsessed and devoted to me that like, he's pretty great. But I love that song because it has such a great transition when the police in the middle of the song explain that the man who was killed was named Fred Casely, and he's like, wait, that's not possible. How could he be a burglar? He's a furniture salesman. Like, he sold us our furniture. And then he says too, which I love, he's like, he gave us 10% off. I'm like, yeah, because he wanted to fuck your wife. But anyway.
And like that again just shows like how like not very smart this man
how
is.
Sort of,
he has no filter and no ability to be like, oh wait, I could be incriminating my wife, and like, wait, what's going on here? And so he's just saying all of it as she's singing it. It was very well done.
It's so good. It's this great sort of overtone of her singing where she's realizing, she's like, what the fuck is wrong with him, basically. Like, she's like, you know, like, now he shot off his trap. And, you know, she's like, look at him. She's like, he's ratting on me, blah, blah, blah. And she has this whole thing at the same time as he's speaking where he's like, oh, I'm just like a fucking idiot. Like, how could I not have realized what was going on? She said he was a burglar, blah, blah, blah. She's just using me as a meal ticket. And he's just yelling all of this to the police.
It's so good.
And then, of course, obviously, Roxy is promptly arrested by Combe Fior, who plays the assistant DA in this, that I was like, hey, I love him. Great Canadian actor. I've seen him on stage. He's wonderful.
Bon cup, bad cup.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, also that. Which no one outside of Canada will have seen that movie.
I know.
It's like not possible. Anyway. So, Roxy is sent to the Cook County Jail in Chicago, which I think was a real place. Or is a real place, was a real place. Oh my God, yeah, it totally is. Look at that. Confirmation. Anyway, she's sent to Cook County. She's obviously like, oh my God, like very distraught, because she really thought that Amos was just going to go to bat for her and that would be the end of it, and it would be self-defense and no one would have to deal with any consequences. That's one thing Roxy's terrible at, dealing with consequences for anything that she does.
Oh yeah, she just does not want to, like, she doesn't think she has to.
No.
And it comes out a lot in the movie, and even her lawyer like despairs of her, you know, because she just keeps like, opening her mouth, and it's like, with you?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So she's sent to the Cook County prison. That's where we meet Mama, who's Mae Morton, who is the matron, I guess, warden to an extent of the women's prison, pretty much played by Queen Latifah. Great. She does a great job.
She does do a great job.
She also has a really great song called When You're Good to Mama, where it's very full of like these double entendre sort of things where everything is very sort of like, you know, the song that she's singing is very jazzy, and technically what she's saying is when you're good to mama, mama's good to you. And because the way that she operates in the prison is that she'll do things for the women. She'll, you know, like she'll help get them interviews, and she'll do all kinds of like stuff for them, bring them stuff that they want, but they have to pay her.
Right.
Like if she gets money under the table, she'll do whatever you want her to do. And whichever woman who's there is getting the most press time, basically, is the one that she's most interested in, because she's out for herself as well, because that's something that you see recurs over and over and over again in every situation. All of these people are just out for themselves, and it doesn't really matter what happens to anyone else. So she has her whole song where she does her little like her little jazzy thing back and forth. It's a really good song. I love it. I don't know what it is, but it's like a really fun song. I really enjoy it. Roxy's brought into her cell, and like these are the times, so like we've kind of seen it to a certain extent with like, you know, her singing about Amos, and then obviously like, you know, when Mama shows up and she has her song. But I think at this point is kind of when you're really starting to see, okay, so Roxy's fucking obsession with working in show business basically manifests itself in her like it's sort of like her overactive imagination manifests these musical numbers that are happening throughout the course of the story, where like, you know, you're getting like, this is how like the character is being introduced and stuff, and everybody's got like an introductory kind of thing. But like, it's that
so well done, like in that number where, you know, they're doing like the six of them, you know, kind of introducing themselves.
Cell Block Tango, and that one, I find that one presents itself well too, because it's like you can tell that she's starting to like do it in her mind, because it's like the water's dripping to a beat, and then she hears someone knocking on like the bars of their cell on a beat as well, and the music starts from there.
But what I was gonna say is what's really well done in the movie, like from a cinematography point of view, is yes, they show all that, and you could almost assume that they are all taking part in a musical number because Catherine Zeta-Jones was a singer and all that.
Yeah.
But then there's like a half a second where they're all sitting down at a table.
Yes, and they'll
just
tell
talking.
you, I'm just explaining what happened, because basically they call them the 6 Mary murderesses, because it's the 6 women who are at the prison for having murdered men, pretty much, basically. So, and they all, that's at the Cell Block Tango number, which goes through, and they also keep it very Broadway style, because they are still doing this on a stage. Like, you can physically see that they're on a stage performing the number, which is also why you know that it's like definitely in someone's head.
You know, what's really fun about I'm using air quotes here, about this story is that it's a very different way of portraying women. Like, none of them are remorseful about what they did. Not even a little bit. The women in this story
are unapologetically like they have done what they've done. My God, the first woman who presents her story killed her boyfriend because he popped gun too loud.
Yep. And she just does not care. She's like, yeah, you would have done it too.
Everybody else, like, hers makes me laugh so much because everybody else, I'm like, okay, I can see it. Like, you know, you've got the one who's like, you know, like she found out that her boyfriend who said he was single was like a Mormon and he had like six wives. Yeah. And you've got another one who apparently her husband attacked her in a jealous rage. You've got like the girl who, like, you know, you've got Velma's story where she explains that that's it. Her sister Veronica and her husband Charlie were having an affair and she walked in on them in the middle of it. Like, all of those things make sense to me. The gum one, I was always like, what the fuck?
It's really funny. And then she says, like, and you would have done it too if you were me. It's like, would you?
You're like, what I do? And this is the only instance where, this is the first instance, I should say, where you get a little bit of a sober moment, where you get one of the women who's there. Her name is Cataline, and she's a Hungarian immigrant who basically speaks no English. Yeah. And explains her story, which I looked up the translation for because it's in Hungarian, so I couldn't tell you. But basically what she explains is that the police and like prosecutors and whatnot have said that she supposedly with her lover murdered her husband by holding him down and like decapitating him, which like, whoa.
That's crazy.
And what she says is basically, I don't understand why Uncle Sam has accused me of this. And she says, and they ask her, and then one of the other women goes, yeah, but did you do it? And she goes, not guilty. And that's all she can basically say in English. And she's the only person who protests and actually says that she's innocent. None of these women are remorseful.
They're all like, yeah, I did it.
They're like, yeah, I fucking did it, and I do it again. It's very much like that. So that's how we get kind of an idea of kind of like what the prison is like, what's happening. And around this time, Roxy realizes that she's going to need like a pretty good attorney. And Mama points her towards Billy Flynn, who's played by Richard Gere, who is a sleazy defense attorney, basically, who's just very fucking good at his job.
Oh, yeah.
And
charges a lot of money for it,
and charges a lot of money for it. What does he ask for? $5,000? Which, like, in 1924, oof.
But also, like, he's very good at his job, but he's a showman,
yes,
right?
He's like, not really a lawyer.
No, he's a showman, and I think he wins his cases by any means necessary.
He wins his cases by any means necessary, and he wins his cases by like a magician, basically, like sleight of hand, or it's sort of like, you know, like, oh, it's like a distraction, like, oh, look at over here, look what's so crazy going on over here, but over here we're just going to ignore the actual facts of the case, and I'm going to push a narrative at you that's much flashier, that's much more like, so much more intense, that you'll get so much more excited by. So that's how he does what he does.
It's very well done, and I love his little like numbers that he has throughout, like,
like when he shows up, he's like, all I care about is love, and you're like, yeah, okay.
He doesn't, and he's like, and then at the same time they're showing him going, yeah, you need to give me $5,000.
Yes.
You know?
And so where you have, it's fun because he knows, he's really good at his job, and he knows how to manipulate the press and the general public opinion by presenting different types of people. So like Velma's like your vampy kind of character, where everyone is just like sort of more like, you know, kind of blown away about the fact that she's like attractive and stuff like that. So they don't really pay attention to what she's actually done. And in Roxy's case, he's like, no, we're going to make you the sweet little born again Christian girl, basically.
Who
so
was
like
in a convent.
Who was in a convent, and and she's like, I don't know, my parents are probably at home. No, your parents are dead.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to tell the press.
Creates a whole narrative. And he tells her, he's like, I'm going to sell you like this. And it's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that his manipulation comes through best when he sings We Both Reached for the Gun, which is a great one. They do it like marionette style, where it's like he's the puppeteer, and he's puppeting Roxy, and he's puppeting all of the journalists, and he's making it very clear that like when the altercation happened before she shot Fred, they both reached for the gun, and he was much bigger than her, and he was much stronger stronger than her. And, and then, of course, to go with the little, oh, I just feel so bad about my actions thing. It's very much like, oh, yeah, stay away from jazz and liquor. And, that whole Chicago life, it corrupted her. And she did something she shouldn't have done. She stepped out on her husband, who they never mention ever. Poor Amos.
Poor Amos, but he does pop up sporadically.
He does sporadically. We get a whole good number with him later, too, which is also, that's the saddest song of the whole movie, as far as I'm concerned. So because of this, Roxy becomes, a sensation, basically. Everyone wants to talk to her. Everyone's like, oh, poor little sweet girl. I can't believe that this has happened to her. Stuck in, this whole situation and everything. So, of course, Velma's pissed because she was the one who was in the papers before. She was the one getting all the attention.
And
now
she's counting on that to get off and then continue her fame.
But of course her trial's being delayed and all that kind of shit, so she's unhappy about it. And Mama's like, I mean, you might just have to go fucking suck up to her. So she gives you a little bit of her time, basically, with the press. So then Velma has her best number of the whole fucking movie, which is I Can't Do It Alone, where she basically is saying, she's like, well, I had a really good double act with my sister. You and I could maybe look at doing something like that. That would be cool. And then she has this whole number that she does by herself, which she's incredible. She does a really good job at it. She won an Oscar for this, which kind of makes sense to me.
That does make sense.
I think they both did, actually.
Did they?
I think Renee Zellweger did as well.
It was a great movie.
Yeah. So anyway, so she does all of it, and because she was pretty mean to Roxy when she first arrived. Roxy basically repays her in kind and is just like, no. You can get fucked, basically, and just no, you go, you have fun. I'm the one who's getting all the attention now.
But she's very naive, I find.
Oh,
Roxy.
so
yes, so naive. Throughout the whole movie, even when they arrest her, she's like, yeah, I killed him and I'd do it again.
Yeah.
She's extremely naive, and I think because she has this grand vision of herself.
Oh, yeah. She feels untouchable in this weird way.
She really seems to think that she's this grand celebrity.
Deserving of all of this attention. Oh, I don't know why people don't want more attention. Want to put me in the spotlight more. I really deserve it. I should be in the spotlight more. And she starts to see that kind of slip away because, because of course that's what's going to happen. The press are a fickle bunch, okay? So, of course, there's another murder. We get a Lucy Liu cameo because she plays this heiress who, showed up at home, found her boyfriend in bed with 2 other women and killed all 3 of them kind of thing. And she's, I like that all of the women present, who are arrested throughout the course of the story, present really different types of, personalities. Velma's your dark seductress type, and Roxy's your ingenue type. And then Kitty, this woman, is basically your angry firecracker type because she kicks one of the reporters in the balls and stuff. And she's just she's being crazy. So, of course, as soon as this happens, it's a bigger story. The press is going away. No one wants to take her picture and stuff. But I will give Roxy that she is ambitious. And in order to retain their attention when everybody, including Billy, is starting to ignore her, she quote unquote faints. Yeah. In behind her cell. And of course, when everybody's like, oh my God, are you okay? They pick her up and she's like, oh, yes, I am. I just, oh God, I hope the fall didn't hurt the baby. And everyone's and I love that Mama goes baby and Velma goes, oh shit. So good.
I know, because she's just standing there watching Roxy.
And Billy's what the fuck?
Because I think, to your point, Velma's character is the dark seductress, and you kind of know where you stand with her. Yes. She's pretty stable in her actions.
Yeah, she retains, the same attitude throughout the whole thing.
Whereas Roxy, it's you don't know what's going to come out of her mouth yet. So that reaction that Velma had, it's oh, shit. Here she goes now. You know?
It's very funny, though. So, of course, obviously, then she starts getting all the fucking attention again. Yeah. Oh, no, she's pregnant. Oh, my goodness, she can't have her baby in prison. Yeah.
She can't be killed.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, my God, we can't hang her. She got a baby in her belly. That's a whole thing, right? So, at the same time, unfortunately, that's it. First of all, poor Amos is mistreated by everybody, including his wife and Billy, who's obviously the baby's not, it's not yours, it's Fred's. You guys haven't, copulated in a while.
4 months.
In several months. Yeah. So obviously the baby's not yours. It's definitely Fred's. And Amos is well, I'm going to get a divorce because, what the hell else am I supposed to do? And Roxy, at this point, because she's managed to get more of this attention, has gotten too fucking big for her britches. She fires Billy because she thinks she knows better than he does about things, at the same time as he's fuck you, I quit.
Yeah.
But she's brought right back down to earth when, unfortunately, Catalin, the Hungarian woman who very much, I believe, was actually innocent. And was a pretty easy scapegoat because she had no language to defend herself with, unfortunately is found guilty and is put to death. She's executed. And that is, I think, a very sobering and a very humbling moment for probably most of the women there, but particularly for Roxy, who thinks that she doesn't need anything from anyone. So, of course, she obviously rehires Billy.
Of course, she goes running right back to him.
Yep. Obviously, Billy does what he does in court and turns this entire thing into a fucking circus, pretty much.
Huge show.
The way that he just, like, distracts the jurors from what's important. He says he objects when no one's even said anything yet. Like, just absurdities, which shows you that, like, he's not a lawyer. He's just a performer, basically.
But he does a great job at it.
And he sings his whole give him the old razzle dazzle song there, where it's just basically that's it, like make it flashy, make it crazy, and that will make people, that will distract people from the facts, that will distract people from what's really going on. So what happens basically is that the prosecutor brings Velma in with Roxy's diary, supposed entries in her diary, to read them, and it's basically, you know, stuff to incriminate Roxy, just saying like, you know, like, oh yeah, I killed him and I'd kill him again. I'm just sad I didn't get to do it twice, kind of thing. But you know, Billy discredits that while Velma's on the stand because he's like, yeah, Roxy wrote things like erroneous. Yeah,
and like she's not a lawyer.
Yeah, he's like, oh God, that sounds like a lawyer. And he twists and turns it and makes it seem like it's the DA who's the person who's actually done this. They like manipulated the diary, blah, 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 blah. But what this has done too is that, like, you know, it's secured for Velma her release because apparently in exchange for testifying, all the charges were dropped against her, and it's just, which is insane.
It's insane. But
she murdered 2 people.
I know, but like the whole thing is crazy because it's like, who are they making an example of? First question.
Yeah.
And then second question is like, you know, Roxy said when they arrested her, I killed him and I'd kill him again. And she writes it in her diary as well. And so you're like, okay, but like, how is he able, and I love the number where he's doing his tap dance because he's
it's so good.
Tap dancing around the courtroom with the story, right? Like he's like doing a tap dance for the jurors.
It's so good.
And you're like, okay, like he's really taking their focus away from the real,
from what's really real, and not giving them. He basically just doesn't give them a moment to question about what might be going on.
Putting so much like noise and like stuff in their face, and the judge is like saying, "I'll hold you in contempt," and he keeps shouting and shouting and shouting. Like it's so good.
So you know, he does all of this basically beautifully, and of course to a point where that's it. We get to the end of the trial.
Yeah.
And I love so much the scene where that's it. We're seeing like, you know, that the foreman is like, yes, we've reached a verdict, blah, blah, blah. And they're about to read what the verdict is. And at the same time, it's interspersed with the newspapers outside. Yes. They've got one copy if she's guilty, one copy if she's innocent. And he's just waiting to get, and they wave a flag out the window with the white to tell him that she's innocent. So that's the one he throws onto the ground. Yeah. That's what they start selling.
Get your news
Oh,
here.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so well done.
In the same moment, another woman shoots a man
her
just
lawyer
outside the courtroom.
Yeah, my understanding is that this is a woman who was going on trial because she had shot her husband, and then she shoots her lawyer on the courthouse steps right outside. Right there.
And so everyone just flocks to this, and they completely forget Roxy.
So she's gotten her moment. Like she got her, and she's out of prison, which like is what you should be grateful for more than anything.
But she doesn't care.
But she's like, nobody wants to take my picture except Amos.
Yeah, and he's Amos like, come home with me. And she's like, no, there's no baby.
Yeah, and he's like,
away.
well, the baby. She's like, there ain't no baby. She's like, you're such a fucking idiot. She's so mean to him. He has a really good number after he had like met Billy earlier. He has a number called Mr. Cellophane, where basically he's saying he's like cellophane, like he's like clear plastic. He's like, you could look right through me, walk right by me, and never know I'm there. Everybody ignores him. No one sees him. He has like this whole thing where he does like a little bit of a dance, and he's putting on like clown makeup, like he's almost like trying to be noticed, like a performer. It's really good, but it's so sad. Like Amos is a really sad character because she's like, there is no fucking baby, and he just leaves.
Yeah, he leaves.
Like I only presume they get divorced, he leaves, and then that's the end of it. And I'm like, God, that's awful.
Well, she gets what she wants, though, doesn't she?
Well, yeah, it just takes a little while because, of course, she wanted the fame right away. But I think we all have to see that that's not necessarily going to happen immediately because she's going through a period of time where she's auditioning. She's trying to get auditions for vaudeville shows, and they're all like, whatever, no thank you, the usual way. Basically, it's like auditioning for Broadway.
Pretty much.
And as she's leaving, Velma's at one of her auditions and is like, listen, I've been talking to this guy over at whatever club, and he says, like, one murderess is not a big deal, but two will really get people in the door. And, of course, we're given to understand that they're both struggling and that they don't have to like each other necessarily, but they can perform together, which is exactly what they do. And they have this whole big fucking show. At the end.
And they got guns and stuff. It's
like
so
they make fun of themselves, like like the audience is super into it and everything. They have like a whole like number that they do. What's it called nowadays?
Yeah.
And basically it just like they do all of that. They get a standing ovation. Everyone's there in the audience. Like Billy's there, Mama's there. Like everyone's like all excited and stuff like that. And it just, I think it's basically telling you that like the corruption is still there. It still exists. And like these women got away with murder and were still able to do what they wanted to do. And it's wild.
Well, I think it's, the name of it is Chicago, right? And
it's just,
that's Chicago.
I think Billy says that at one point. He just says that's Chicago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So very good. It was just like a good time. And
it was such a different but interesting time.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think to watch it even with like under like a more modern lens is still interesting because you still realize there are more regulations in place, but you realize still how much happens and is misconstrued by media.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And how it's manipulated and how, even now, if we put out a story like this, there's this expectation of like, the woman to be the way that he was portraying Roxy to be, like very sweet and innocent
and demure and
I didn't mean to do it. And oh my gosh, like I have no idea how to use a gun.
Yeah.
And, like, all this, and we still see things being made like that now in modern day.
For sure.
So I thought it was really interesting and it was fun to watch a movie that was made in 2002 and seeing like Catherine Zeta-Jones and Nicole, what's her face?
Renee Zellweger.
Zellweger. And it's just fun because it's like, you see them now and they're in like very different roles.
For sure.
Stuff, and
but to see them like at this period is interesting. And there is something fun that almost fits better now than it did like 20 odd years ago about like that's it, a whole group of women who unapologetically are doing whatever the fuck they want to do.
They're like, I would do it again. Like it was good. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's a fun one. But have you seen Chicago? A lot of people have seen Chicago.
Well, not everyone.
No, not everybody, but a lot of people have seen Chicago. I'd be really curious to hear from people also who've like seen a stage production of it, which I would really like to do at some point because I'd be really curious to see like, some of what they incorporated in the film of like sort of the songs interspersed with like scenes of what's going on throughout the course of the show and everything. I'd be really curious to see what that looks like on stage, So you guys can let us know about that over on Instagram at fullybookedca. We're on Threads now because apparently Twitter's a shitstorm that nobody wants to be part of anymore. So we've moved over to cool Threads, which you can find us over there too. I believe just search at fullybookedca as well, and you'll find us over there. And you can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.